This is Eric L. Dunavant, the Mindset Disruption Strategist. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Redefining Success. And today, I can already tell we're going to have a good time. So sit back, relax, get comfortable. This is going to be a great visit with Nate Lappegaard. He is the CEO and co-founder of the Kite and Dart group. Nate, I told you this before we got on, you had me at entrepreneurial activism and transforming the world through business. When I read that on your website and everything else, I was like, we've got to have this guy on and we've got to tell this story. So Nate, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Eric. And thanks for what you do and the stand you are for people to define their own success. I love it. Yeah. Glad to be here.
Well, we're excited. Before we get into things, my favorite question always, my first question is, pretend it's a good, bright, beautiful Saturday afternoon. I've got the grill fired up. We've got the hot dogs and burgers and everything on. We're all just hanging out, and here are my friends. My audience are my friends. Would you please introduce yourself to my friends?
Sure. My name's Nate. And about 8 years ago, circumstance put me in a position to start a coaching and consulting business. So I just went with it. And here we are like 8 years later, and we're still going strong and have a bunch of adopted kids. And I've just learned so much from the people that have been generous enough to work with me. It's like, and it's beyond it's like this business thing, man, it turned out to be so much cooler than I thought business was. Yeah, that's what I would say. I've learned so much.
Well, so take us back. 8 years ago sounds like something happened. Take us back 8 years ago.
Oh, you're gonna like this. So it's like 8 or 9 years ago. I'm working in the cannabis industry because I thought that would be a gold mine. I got a mohawk that's about a foot tall, and people, I was on MTV, Jobs That Don't Suck. So people Google me, they can see that, and I had the cannabis industry was just a mess, highly regulated in Colorado, and they change the laws every 2 seconds, and it changed everything about our business. And we finally got to a point in our relationship with the industry that the boss and I were like, we didn't have any more fires to really put out. And what I came to understand was like, it was his business. It wasn't my business. And the way that he wanted it to go was the way it needed to go. And if I didn't feel like that was the way it needed to go, then I needed to either respect his opinion or get out. So I left. He's a great guy. Sean like put me on to register me in Landmark and just was like incredibly generous. And it was like a really good thing. So I was just like doing some consulting work and driving an Uber. And then my wife's like, she goes, we're going to be business coaches. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? She's like, my wife is like the best entrepreneur there is. She owns a real estate company here in Colorado, and her coaches they started to sell intellectual property, and we had just sold a house. So, we bought some IP, and I became a business coach, and that was it. Shave off the mohawk, put on a shirt and tie, and blindly stumble into the world of, at that time, business coaching.
Sure.
So that's how it started, man. That's what happened. My wife said, and I said something. I said, okay, here we are.
Wow.
I know.
Oh, so hold on. So how do we get from Mohawk to transform the world through business? I feel like I'm missing
part
of the journey.
Hey man, you're good at this interviewing thing. That's a great question. So here's what's up. So I'm a person in recovery.
Yep. So
I've been sober now for about over 15 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. I'm a lucky man. And 12-step programs work. Can tell you that. So having had that experience of, like having myself be one way and then doing some stuff and coming out the other end different, my life, like I owe my life to that transformation is possible. Yeah. And my old boss, Sean Gindy, I did a lot of work at Landmark, which is a personal transformation program. And, I often say that 12-step work gave me my life back. And then Landmark work taught me what to do with it. And so I had an interest in transformation and in coaching and like transformation to begin with. And so, you know, when business, you know, when the business coaching opportunity came, I just applied what just what we do, right, as entrepreneurs is we just use what we know already and try to make it work. So that's all that happened is I had a background in transformational work and personal transformation and a big interest in that. And so those principles kind of formed the context for how I started to look at entrepreneurship more from the level of an entrepreneur's relationship to the business and how that impacts the choices we make and the interpretation of the results. So I just started because I didn't know shit about business. So I'm sorry. I didn't know anything about business. So I had to work with what I had, which was transformation. And I didn't know a lot about business. I had had a production company before and it ran a music career, and I had a product demonstration business in the natural foods industry. So I knew about entrepreneurship, but what I really loved was working with people to, you know, help them transform their lives. Yeah. So that's how it started.
What is, what's the number one thing you find holds people back from embracing an entrepreneur journey?
Oh, internalized white supremacy.
To tell me more.
Yeah. So
I mean, you just hit you hit like 3 trigger words all at once. You can't just let that sit there. So
no, man, it's cool. Like, so now that half the listeners just shut off and all the rest of us are still here. What I mean by that is that our culture is pushing a narrative about entrepreneurship that is not coming from entrepreneurs. It's coming from folks that, for the most part, folks that have successful businesses based primarily on the position in life that they were born into, or folks that somehow like got out of the, you know, they kind of broke through and you know, for whatever reason, and you know, economic system that thrives when people spend money on businesses. So for me, it's like what I've found is like what we're taught about business before we're in business. And I work with non-traditional entrepreneurs. So I work with people who like have been historically excluded from entrepreneurship, who don't come from business backgrounds. And all we have is like what basically corporations have taught us about how businesses run. And that stuff is not relevant at all. Yeah. And that's what I think we're up against is the shoulds, Eric. You know, I should have a website. I should be able to do this. I should do that. And I just tell people like, you're perfect, whole and complete the way you are. You don't need to change anything about yourself to have a successful business. You just got to build a business that lets you shine.
That's powerful. That's powerful. I think that, you know, it keeps coming up for me inside of the space when I think about this, and you may disagree about this a little bit, but I feel like what has happened in the last 10 to 15 years is we lost a lot of the definition of business from a standpoint of we started emphasizing profit over people. And maybe it's longer than that, right? I mean, I'll give it longer than that, and have missed the entire idea that profit and people are both possible.
100%. And you know, like I'm going to look at capitalism and business from a more left-leaning perspective. Sure. I'm going to, you know, but it's, and there's nuance there between me and you, but 100%, Eric, like if you look at the numbers, it started in the early 80s under Reagan, where we started to see growth of, you know, like up until that point, lower middle-class incomes were growing and upper-class incomes were staying the same. And since then, it's completely flipped, where the rich are getting richer and middle class is struggling and the poor are getting poorer. And under that type of pressure, you know, that's what happens. Also think like in order to pull that off, you know, we really have to start driving a different, like a narrative of that people don't make it because it's entirely their fault or something, right? Like to get, you know, we got to have this like idea that people succeed solely on merit in order to justify people not succeeding. So, and I see that. I also see like we've gotten really good as a culture of like generalizing and blaming the victim and not standing together in solidarity. You know, not understanding like, oh yeah, like this is how it's always been, you know. Like we have to be together down here in the lower levels, and we have to be together if we're going to have any power or any say. And I think they've got really good at like keeping us separate.
That I totally would agree with. I mean, the ability to have a conversation and healthily disagree about something, but be willing to hear someone else's story to understand why they think and believe the way they do is like it's so lost on everyone right now.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, like there's a minimum level of like acceptance. Like there's certain people that I'm not going to engage in those types of conversation with, because I know that I like, most of the time I'll tell them like, I like you too much to have this conversation. Right. No, I'm not, I know that there's like, we're not going to find common ground in that area, and it's a waste of time.
Sure.
And though there's a dehumanization that happens where, we're not by not understanding like that, we are the way we think, we think the way we think, and we are the way we are a lot because of the environment we grow up in.
Sure. And,
and like, if we don't have at least some degree of empathy, and I don't think that empathy means co-signing on some of the stuff we're seeing.
Sure.
But by not having empathy, we don't understand that it's like the same system that's pushing us all down.
Yeah. Right.
Right. That's trying to keep us where we're at. And I get it. I mean, like, look, capitalism does not encourage competition. We know that, like, right? Like that's part of the system. So this idea that like the marketplace is this open and free environment, and that like starting a business should be easy and it's really quick, and like if you're not making a lot of money, it's your fault. Like all that's what I'm talking about, really.
Yeah.
Like an unrealistic expectation. And yeah, man, like the kind of like overhanded, like I would say like the misuse of technology and access now. Okay. Right. Like all the freaking cold calling and the LinkedIn cold messages and like all that stuff too. It's just like, wah! So I'm with you. Right. Long answer, short answer, long. Yes, sir. I agree.
What have you, I mean, because again, let's go back to this transforming the world through business, right? So what are you finding are being the keys to, the name of the show is Redefining Success, but if you're a person who is raised in a place or a mindset where you're being held back, right?
Okay.
And so you're in that place. What are the things that you're having to overcome, or what are the things that you're doing that are unlocking a different possibility, that are showing them that they really can transform the world through business? Because the number one thing that holds all of us back is a mindset.
That's it. Yep. You and I are talking about the same thing, right? Like that's how I think this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're calling it different things, and the way that you and I work is different, and that makes our businesses accessible to different people, and you get to reach people that I can, and I get to reach people that you can't, and I mean, and that's what it is to be like on a team. So you say mindset, I'll call it like context or identity.
Okay.
And really, I think what it is first of all, like all businesses start through emulation. Right. So when we all start our businesses, we have an idea in our head that we know, or we think we know what X business is supposed to look like. And here's the things we're supposed to do. Yeah. No. And I don't have to, Eric, you and I have been in business for a while. Like, look, for all of you that are out there, whether you've been in business a while or not, like this is the only time your business has ever existed, and you're the only person who's ever run it. And there's no way you can look at a business and see all the variables and factors that contribute to a business success or failure. It's not knowable. But so we all enter into this entrepreneurial conversation for the most part from a position of like, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, like we think we know what works, but I'm thankful for that, because I never would have started my business otherwise. So eventually though, that runs out, because we get to, if we're lucky enough that we can live through like the proof of concept phase of entrepreneurship, we start to notice that the things that we have been conditioned or trained to do, or hell, even the things that worked in the beginning, they're not working anymore.
Yep.
And the key is, and I call this a transition from like survival in business to performance in business. And what it comes from is adopting a new, what you would call a mindset, I would say a context from a deep level of how do we go about making decisions in the business. And what we say is inside out, not outside in. So when I work with entrepreneurs, what works for them is we take a look at what a human being is passionate about, what they're confident in doing, what they have experience doing. And we take a look at like the change they want to make in the world with their business. And we get them to start taking actions consistent with that. Like basically, instead of them giving themselves a job and having to like conform to the job,
Yep.
we begin to get people to start to act like CEOs. And for those of us that don't come from that background, or that's not what got us to entrepreneurship. What got us to entrepreneurship was like, being good at stuff we're not good at. Right? And that's good in the beginning of a business because you got to do everything. But man, where I work with strategy and scaling with entrepreneurs is to get them to understand that like the purpose of this business is a vehicle for you to make a contribution in the world. And to make the maximum contribution, you've got to stop trying to be good at web design when you suck at that.
Yeah.
You got to stop. Like if you suck at, I always tell people, like, if you suck at that, don't do that. Like what do you need a website for? Like nobody ever goes there anyway. Right? You're good at talking to people. Go talk to more people.
Oh, that's good.
And I mean, and then if you feel like you really need it, and you're gonna hire somebody, but like, we don't need that. We don't need any more than who we are. Like we're all good enough right now. We just have to build a business that works for us, not the other way around. And that is hard.
Yeah.
Because it's scary. Yeah.
The other thing too, so my wife and I have a real passion around poverty. So areas, we live in the New Orleans area. So we see a lot of poverty, right? So we have a real passion around the area of poverty, but also coming in and going, I don't know the answer of how to solve this, right? So being open to be in the place of, I'm here to listen. I want to know more so that we can engage solutions that work for everyone, not coming in with ideas. But here is the one thing I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, because I imagine you've seen this. Here's the number one thing that I found is the difference is hope. When I get to the place that I have no hope that it can be different, it's tough to undo anything. And if I can
100%.
give someone hope, then all possibilities are on the table.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things that we could do a much better job of as a culture is understanding that like not everybody has equal access to opportunity or possibility.
Sure.
Right. And by design. So and it's like, and I love what you're saying, Eric, which is like, I don't get it. I'm a cishet white dude and I've been through a bunch of like rough stuff, but like when you look at me, you don't see that.
Yeah.
Like when I'm going to close a deal, people can make up whatever they make up about white dudes. And honestly, you and I both know like that's advantageous to us in the fields we're in. Sure. Right. But people are predispositioned in this culture to think that you and I know what the heck we're talking about.
Right.
So, and that's like part of it for me too in business is like, as a consultant, like I'm not there.
Yeah.
So I'm in your business for like, on a good client, like 4 hours a month, maybe 6 hours a month. So I have to be humble to that. Also, I don't understand exactly how businesses work. Not just because I don't know everything doesn't mean I don't know anything, but I got to get humble to that. And luckily for me, I approached it from the position of curiosity. Like, I wonder what makes business work. What can I learn from these clients? And I think it's the same thing, like obviously, none of us have started entrepreneurship, with rare exceptions. Sometimes people start in entrepreneurship that are not cishet white dudes because it's dangerous for them to go to work. They're going to get sexually harassed. They're going to get racially harassed. Like it's not safe. And then a lot of those people, like creating a business is a self-defense mechanism. But for people like you and I, and most of the entrepreneurs I think that I have the privilege to work with, the conversation is about something different. It's about really wanting to have a business, to have agency, to have the freedom, to have the choice of who we're around, and really a curiosity about like, hey, can I do this?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of that's what I see as the soup of it. And that's random and probably not anything to do with what you asked me, but hopefully it plays well.
No, it definitely does play. It does play. I think what I would, when you sit down, tell me kind of who's your ideal client? Like, what is the person who comes to you? This is going to help me kind of shape the question. I don't want to ask a question based on an assumption. Tell me who the ideal person who comes to Kite Dart Group. What's brought them there, or how have you found them?
So we have products and services to meet, any non-traditional entrepreneur wherever they're at.
Okay.
But I'll talk about my segment of the business. And I like to work with in strategy and scaling. So for me, my ideal client is going to be someone who's in consulting, professional services in the B2B realm.
Okay.
And I like that because I like to work with people that work with people because it amplifies the impact.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Number two, they're going to be left leaning straight up.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to be more like, and I don't mean it like so much from a political ideology, but I'm going to work best with people who think that the solution to the problems of the present is innovation, not repeating the same actions that we took in the past to produce the common results. That's all.
Yeah.
Yep. However they identify, but those are the people I work with. And then, they're going to be in business for a year or two. Okay. And they're going to have they're going to do about 100K in revenue a year. And their back is against the wall, man. They're busy.
Yeah. They're
busy and it's working. And the experience they're having is inconsistent with what they want it to be like. Those are my people. Mm-hmm. So
what's the biggest inconsistency most of the time that they find or that you recognize in them?
Lack of agency, lack of freedom to choose, like busy. And
is that perceived or real?
Yeah, good question. I mean, a perception is reality. So for them, it's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it comes from, I just like people that are in that transition space where there's like an inkling and like a little itch in the back of their brain, like, hey, probably there's another way to do this.
Yes.
Right. And then, and we're caught in between like what got us here and that transformation that's required to get us to the next season of business. I like to think about business as like in seasons,
Absolutely.
And in the beginning season, there's a way to be. And then in all these other seasons, there's different ways to be. And that's when I love those conversations. And I like working with people that are kicking butt.
Yeah.
That like are doing a dang thing and sticking to their guns. That's what I like too. So I don't know. I mean, I just like people. But that's where I'm most effective though. I'm most effective with people like clients are going to get the most out of me if that's the position they're in.
So what I've found for most successful entrepreneurs and business owners is what they're really, really good at or what they enjoy the most comes from an experience where they messed it up or they got stuck themselves and figured out how to get unstuck. So Nate, inside of this part of the story, that had to have happened for you before you got passionate about this. So where did this unlock for you so you could coach on it?
It's such a good question. So I grew up in a household where my father was an active alcoholic. And I love my father and I feel like he did the best he could and he did a rotten job.
Yeah.
Yep. And I love my mother and she did the best she could and she did a rotten job. And I grew up in an environment where nothing was good enough and I wasn't safe.
Yeah.
And then when I became 18 years old, I too have the disease of alcoholism. So I started drinking. So my childhood was like, nothing's good enough and I'm not safe no matter what I do. And then I find a solution to all this angst. And then that just like drags me down. Man, like the summer before my senior year of high school, I had 31 on my ACT scores and, just like a 99th percentile. I also had a 4.0 GPA and I didn't graduate from high school on time because I discovered getting loaded that summer. And I mean, I was like, this is what I'm looking for. Like I need some kind of relief. So,
yeah.
And then, for 15 years, I would build it up and I would break it down and I would build it up and I would break it down. And so I didn't come into, when I got sober, there was just like a lot to deal with. And so I didn't have the best self-esteem and I had a lot of privilege and I did a lot of work. So I could see that there was a difference I could see why I thought that my worth was outside of me.
Got it. Yep.
Right. Because I didn't feel like I had a lot of inherent self-worth and I had spent a life proving that point. And so for me, what I had to realize, and I continue to realize this is like, look, I'm a heavily traumatized person. I have ADD. I have depression. I'm on 3 or 4 kinds of psychiatric medication. It's hard for me to show up on time naturally. It's hard for me to remember things naturally, but I figured it out. And the way I figured it out was having some mercy on myself by saying like, look, like if I'm not going to be the kind of person that's going to show up all the time naturally, then what systems do I need to put in place so that I show up? And what kind of people I need to put around me and give them the agency to hold me responsible so I can show up. Yeah. And I had to understand that, like, just like everybody else, I have strengths and I have weaknesses. And instead of like doing what we're taught in school is to bring the weaknesses up to my strengths, I just lean into my strengths. And I try to create a business that like I couldn't survive, man.
Yeah.
You know, I got sharp edges. I'm good at some things and I suck at other ones. And so for me, and I had some privilege, so I was able to get help, but like, that's what's up. Yeah. So I agree with you. Like, so for me, where the constant work that I'm doing is trying to be current with who I am in my life. Yeah. Like what and I struggle with that. And that has an impact on the world around me. And so my constant work is remembering, like, I'm really good at what I do. And I'm lucky to get to do it. And my people, like my clients, over and over again, they prove that to me when they get the results. And I want the same thing for them. You know, I need Kite and Dart as a consistent reminder that, like, I can do this. Yeah. And I want that same thing at a deep level. I want that for my clients. I want them to discover their uniqueness and the power they have to really cause and make a difference in the world. Is, you know, when they start to make the business about them and stop trying to be what they're not. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. 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 That's it.
Or to be what somebody else expects. I mean, one of my favorite words from Jesus was love your neighbor as yourself. And the problem that we so many times miss is we go love your neighbor, love your neighbor, love your neighbor. That's not what he said. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. And so many times where I find if I get stuck, it's because I don't love me. I don't accept me for who I am. And that's what I hear you saying inside of that, which is so powerful. It starts right here.
Yeah. I practice Judaism. I'm what they call a righteous Gentile. My wife's a Jew. I am not Jewish, but I practice Judaism. And one of the things the rabbi says is, you know, that Hashem puts a spark of godliness inside each and every single one of us. And that spark within is incorruptible. So no matter what I do, or no matter what you do, or no matter what anybody does, or what actions I take, there is inside of us that part that is Hashem. And so when I am, well, you know, one, you know, there's some similarities. Y'all came, you know, like Jesus was a Jew, so we're good.
Right, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So you know, we may have different opinions on other stuff than that, but we do know that Jesus was a Jew, right? So
absolutely, yeah, no,
there. Yeah, 100%. So when I really, like, at a deep level, Eric, I can't believe you got me here. Like, I've never gotten here in like a public forum. Really, what's happening, man, is like when we start to run a business based on what we care about. Yep. And the difference we want to make, and we start focusing on where we're great and stop focusing on what we're not great. We're honoring the beauty of our own creation. Like, God, Hashem does not make pieces of poop.
Right. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
So at a deep level, that's what's going on in our work. You know, it's like personal transformation, thinly veiled as business strategy, but you know what? It works in both ways.
Well, I'm going to say it in a different way. Yeah. You could we'll see where this goes. But no. But God is a creator. He created us to create. So we're never more connected or like God than when we're in business and creating. Every single one of us.
Right. And I think, I mean, other than when women have children, then they're closer than I am and will ever be. Right? Because
that's a whole different level of creation.
But I agree with you. And when we look at that spark within, we just have a tendency in this culture, right, to think that if something's good, it's because someone else did it, and if something's bad, it's because I did it. And what I had to learn, and what our work shows people, is like, look, like, you didn't choose what you care about, and you didn't choose what you're great at. And both things, what you care about and what you don't care about, and what you're great at and what you aren't great at, all those are clues to how you could to how you can be most effective in serving others, which, regardless of how corporations have hijacked the narrative that you and I both know, is the key to success in business. And all business is a tool for contribution. The narrative has been hijacked by these large corporations and that kind of like all that stuff none of us like. But really, at this level, this is about helping people. And for me, business is about finding a way to help people where I'm most effective. And in order to do that, I got to know where I'm great and where I'm not so great.
Well, the other thing I love about what you're doing, and I don't know what you're seeing, you have kids?
Yeah, I have 5 adopted children, and 4 of them are asylum seekers from Honduras.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How old?
So 6.
Okay.
10.
Okay.
15.
All right.
20 and 23.
Okay. So this is where I'm going with this. So I have a 20, soon to be 21-year-old and an 18-year-old, but I have a lot of conversations about business with my 20-year-old. And he teaches me so much because you see a lot of and I don't know if you're seeing this from, I don't know when you adopted them and how long they've been with you, and you've been able to cut, and you've even got the refugee experience, their view on this, but he gets so frustrated with just business and the world and a lot of what we see from corporate America, and then turns around and looks at his own father, who is a business owner. And so you get some transference of this mindset or, this way of thinking. And it's the ability and the place of having conversations about, no, the business is a mechanism to make it what we want it to be, to make it into the thing. Business doesn't define who we are. And just because somebody else has screwed up the narrative out in the public doesn't mean we have to screw it up in the way that we run it.
No. And honestly, like that's the key to success.
Yeah.
Is to get that, look, they got here before we did. And there's this, and whether it's intentional or not, which I'm not sure on, corporations control the narrative for business, and they're not, and what works for them ain't going to work for me.
Yep.
And so then what's going to work? And I think, and the other thing is, man, it's pretty bad. And if we look at history, we know that it's been pretty bad.
Yeah.
But guys like Zig Ziglar existed in the 70s, which is like a miracle. And he was like, just take care of people and they'll take care of you.
Yeah.
And so for me, what I look at, I think for folks like you and I and your son, which I appreciate that generation, I think they're smarter than we'll ever be because they have had access to all the information for as long, and they know how to discern.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get why some people are scared of these folks because, they're another level.
Right.
My son is Edwin, the oldest. He's been with me for 5 years. He started working full time when he was 10 years old in construction. He knows the world in a way that I don't know it, and so I do value his wisdom. He's also fixing to go to college on a full ride for aeronautical engineering or something. That guy walked here from Honduras, and now he's going to make spaceships.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That is awesome.
So
congratulations.
So yeah, good for him. So I think for me, man, I forget, what were we talking about? You got me thinking about my son. He just graduated.
We're just talking about the next generation, but also
You're so right. Motivation. So here's my experience. So for people that don't come from money, or that, no, don't get me wrong, Eric, I prefer the presence of money to its absence.
Sure.
But I'm not going to get up for money. Well, let me say this. If I have to get up for money, it's because I needed to survive.
Yeah.
Right. And I think for entrepreneurs like you and I, that's where that, that we're talking about, that break point is, once our businesses reach this point where, our financial needs are somewhat satisfied, we're paying our own way and we're able to pay back the debt of the past, we stop growing because we're very good at making ends meet. We're not motivated by money. And when we do that, we get this flattening of the curve. So what I learned really early on at Kite and Dart is we had to start looking for a different motive. It's not profit motive, contribution motive.
Yeah.
And contribution motive works because it produces eternal transformation, right?
Yeah, it does.
If I'm committed to sharpening the steel, to getting better at what I do every day over and over again, I am never going to quit showing up to work.
Yeah.
Because that's what drives me. The results that my clients produce, that's what drives me. And right now in this season of my business is how do I make my work more accessible?
I love that.
Yep. How do I make it less expensive? How do I make it easier for people to learn? How do I, that's the game I'm playing now. And I'm blessed that I got to that point.
That is so fantastic. That is so fantastic. I love what you're doing. I love your story. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you wanted to make sure you get to share?
Man, I can't remember anything anyway. So we're good. No, I'm kidding. No, I think, Eric, you're, like I said in the beginning, you're really good at what you do. And I want to acknowledge you for something. And I know your listeners get this, but I want to acknowledge you for the way that you came to this conversation without an agenda.
Mm.
And I imagine that when you work with clients, there's a way that you listen to them and there's a way you pay attention that makes what you say very relevant to them. And it shows up here. So if you're listening, y'all, like, notice how Eric, played and danced with me in this interview, and then try on that that's incredibly beneficial to you and your business. And I see you over there, Eric. So I want to acknowledge you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Nate.
Most people are not that way. I appreciate you.
Well, no, I appreciate you, but I also appreciate that you've got a story to tell and you have redefined success from the rest of the way that the world tells success. And my job is to tell you, my job in the 30 to 40 minutes that I have you is to help you tell your story. So thank you. Thank you for being authentic and being real, because you could have just sat here and answered yes and no questions. So thank you.
I mean, like, what I'm good at, man, is talking.
Yeah.
So I have a new PA. She's amazing. Carrie's her name. And I say, Carrie, how can we make it so all I do is talk? She's like, we're going to figure it out. I can't believe it's over already. That went so fast. Thank you, Eric.
I had one other thing I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
But do you know who Simon Sinek is?
Yeah.
So if you have not read his book, it came out about a year and it came out right before COVID, I think, a book called The Infinite Game. Have you read this?
No, I read it. What is it? Find Your Why. I read that one.
Yep. No, that one's fantastic. But I would encourage you to read it only because everything you and I are talking about, it was some things that he said inside of there. And he was talking about corporate culture and things like that. But he's like, what really landed with me that I think you'll love. And I share this with you, but he says inside that book, there are two ways to live life and run your business. One is to run it as if there's a finish line and whether or not you're going to win. The second one is to run it as a relay race, understanding that you are simply a person in the middle of the relay and your job is to take the baton and pass the baton to the next generation. When you live an infinite game life, it's a game changer, but completely rewarding.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you a secret. It happens to be a much better way to run a business. Like, you're going to make more. I mean, like, I'll tell people, like, where I come from, I get, like, can sound woo or a little bit like, like spirit, whatever, but honestly, like pragmatically, what I'm talking about is the best way to work less and make more money.
Absolutely.
And that discovery, so you asked me earlier, like, what? So that discovery was what really changed me. I was sitting at my desk, like, COVID rocked us, Eric. Like, I was doing 12-month strategy and consulting packages and like building these really elegant, individualized, like, business development plans based on what people are great at and the source commitments and all this. And then, when COVID hit, people were not going to buy a 12-month coaching package. And we pivoted. I had a business partner. I have a business partner, Karen Bartlett, who like saved our business. And, about a year ago, I was sitting at my desk and this feeling came upon me and I said, I'm going to die doing this work. I am going to die doing this work. And I was like, what a blessing. So really, that's what I want for my people, is like, what is a job? Like, what is a business that you would like that it couldn't, let's build the one they can't tear you away from. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So I told you this was coming. In 3 generations, what do you hope your great-grandchildren remember about you?
So that I was part of a conversation for transforming our awareness as a humanity of what business and life is for. That they can look back and say, my grandfather was there when we used to think that it was okay for like people to have billions of dollars while other people were starving. And that he was part of the conversation for transforming our narrative as a species from survival to contribution. And I would love that. That would be the best thing.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Thanks, man.
I love that.
Thank you, sir.
Nate, if people want to get in touch with you, want to follow you, want to know more about what's going on, you had mentioned, and we didn't even bring this up, you have a nonprofit that you were wanting to talk about, and I totally missed it. So show that off.
Yeah, I got a nonprofit called Promise Tomorrow. And it's designed to address the issue of mental health in the music industry, both in performers and art, and also in listeners. You know, the average musician will live 20 years less than a normal person in this culture. And I've lost, you know, over 15 friends to accidental deaths and suicides since I got sober. And so Promise Tomorrow is a way for me to say, look, like, it's the stories that, you know, the way that we were raised to believe that, like, that just happened. Nah, man, that doesn't just happen. Like artists and musicians are exploited so that record companies can make a lot of money. And, like, we got to change the way that it works. And we have to, instead of this conversation for prohibition and all this stuff, we need to have a realistic idea about, like, how our minds work and how our brains work and how we can have good mental health. So you can learn about that at www.promisetomorrow.org. And that's been wonderful. If people want to get a hold of me, they can email me, Nate, N-A-T-E, at kitedart.com. Kite like you fly, dart like you throw. Or people can just come to the website, www.kitedart.com or www.kiteanddartgroup.com. I'd love to hear from people. I promise, like, if people email me, I just love to talk.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Thank you, Nate. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for your passion.
You too, man. Thanks for working so hard to build this audience and just let me show up and talk to them. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. It has been such a fun time. I will be here again next week. God bless you. Have a fantastic day.